So brought to us by Stoic. I'm not sure if it's Stoic Entertainment or Stoic Games. It doesn't really matter. Published by Versus Evil, at least now. It's the Banner Saga. It's the Banner Saga. So the Banner Saga is a game that is heavily inspired by, though clearly not historically accurate to, the Vikings. This is some Viking shit right here. So let's take a look at what we think we can expect from the Banner Saga. And at some point, I'm going to need to get out of the way because I'm blocking some important shit on this title screen. So when we get there, I'll get out of your way. So the first thing that I'm drawn to on this title screen, and I think you might be too, is color use. Beautiful, beautiful use of color. It's so hard, I think, to make a static title screen jump out and say much to us, right? We're so used to like 3D title screens, like idling effects. The only movement on this whole screen is the gentle drifting of snow, but this beautiful leap forward of color. And what's interesting here is that the most clearly obvious color is that red, right? The red of the banner, the literal banner of the aforementioned saga, and then the red orange of this banner. I guess that the woman is she's not weaving, she's like stitching I think the edges too, the gold stitching. So obviously that's the big clear jump out color, but I gotta tell you, the color I'm really digging on this screen, and obviously your mileage may vary based on the color balance of your monitor. Look at that gold around the Banner Saga. Look at the word saga. It's this like brilliant, gentle gold. I love it. It's an awesome choice of color. It really lends a big punch to that kind of embossed vibe of the word banner. I really like the choice of that color as an accent. I think that's to me what drew me right to that, above and beyond the red, right to the logo. I think it's interesting, while we're talking about the color choice here, it's interesting to note that the foreground is pretty much all warm colors. The midground is all kind of green tones, green and dark blue tones. And then the further back we get, the cooler the palette is, which is quite cool. It's quite interesting. It's a nice use of fading color from warm to cool, though there is some shadow in the foreground that helps pop that red and orange. I'm thinking not just of the gold and the red in the banner, but of the woman's hair, of the gold bit in her hair, the darker red of the Axeman's cloak there. And then we transition into the sort of yellow and orange of the logo itself, and then our friend, the horned Viking, his blonde beard and hair there. So again, we're sort of pulled backwards through this shot, and that's achieved as well. If you'll pardon my getting out of your way here, that's achieved as well by the structure of the screen. The long dip, and I'm gesturing, but you can't, of course, see me now. The long dip of the cloak frames, along with the banner above it, it frames this pending action. It frames the movement of the Viking, because everything in this has a pastoral stillness except this guy. This guy strikes me as like an interrupter. This is the dude that is inciting action, right? He's the one that separates our gentle moment of intimacy in the foreground from the literal army gathering in the background, right? We have spears, we have shields, we have body language. If you look at the folks in that army or that gathering, they look tense or nervous. And I feel like, if I had to guess, this is a scene of someone bringing bad news, or like a call to arms, right? This is the Awakening of King Arthur kind of vibe that I'm getting. It doesn't strike me that the man or the woman have like done anything wrong. This isn't a coming for justice kind of scene to me. There's a sort of gentleness here that is about to be interrupted by this armed man, sword drawn. Now, had he his sword flipped over in his hand, if the sword was presented as point first, it would recontextualize the scene, right? But I feel like even though he has his sword drawn, he is approaching with, a call to arms to like a retired hero, something like that. I really, really like the juxtaposition of the man and his axe and his body position with the woman in front of him. there's a almost like this weird kind of like biblical image vibe to it, right? Like I get this Mary and Joseph kind of thing. Like obviously that's not kind of what the game is going for. This game is absolutely not leaning into Christian mythology, but something about the look and the way that he's sitting strikes me as being like almost like Renaissance art. Someone in chat mentioned that this reminds them of The Last Unicorn as well, which I think is really cool. But I don't know the relationship between these two, right? There is a protectiveness, but notice he's not touching her, right? Like she's leaned against his body, but he isn't touching her at all. He's holding the cloak out for her to enable her work, right? But also there's a protectiveness. It's like he's shielding her because if you think about it, from the perspective of the guy with the horns approaching, he wouldn't be able to see her, right? And then watching over both of them, we have the raven up above, really clear, really obvious image of Norse mythology, right? Generally, we see the ravens in pairs in Norse mythology, but even a single raven is able to kind of continue to invoke that vibe, along with the garb and the imagery, the knotwork that they have. Now, what's interesting here is that the raven is looking out ostensibly at the field, but if we follow the raven's gaze, we see the berries there. And I'm not sure their significance, but by painting them red, by putting these red berries center screen in the top, and giving the eyesight line of the bird, we're drawn to them. So that may be something that'll come up in the game as well. I think in all, this is the kind of title screen that invites you to want to move forward. This is not a, here is what you're going to get. This is a, we're setting the stage, right? This is the opening of the saga. This is the description of like the armies massed before the man and giving us this kind of preset stage for the action that's to come. And I love seeing an army inactive, right? I love seeing this army collected inactively, ready for motion. Now, what's really cool about the way the army is assembled is they look like they are waiting to find out. Like, you can tell that it feels like their destiny, their future is hinged on the conversation that I assume would be like the start. If this was a play or a saga, that would be the first thing that would happen. It would be the conversation between these three, between the bearded warrior, the axe man, and the woman that he has his protective arm around. Right? We're seeing the prequel to action, and I think that that's great for a title screen. It's really meant to sort of draw you in. As far as font choice goes, as far as the labeling of the items on the screen, obviously the Banner Saga logo itself sitting on the banner. I imagine that banner is meant to represent what's below, right? We're meant to see this as being the kind of metaphorical banner for the literal banner. And then the name of the game, the Banner Saga, either I think will refer to a specific banner or to the idea of banner men, of banners as representations of different power groups. Being called to arms under a banner is a way to illustrate going to war. Choosing this as your central motif indicates that there's going to be conflict on a large scale, right? It isn't the Shield Saga. It isn't the Axe Saga. It's the Banner Saga. So it's about armies. It's about war. It's about grand change rather than small stuff. If this game were the Axe Saga, I might wonder, who's going to get executed, right? It might be about single combat, but this to me illustrates that the scale and scope of the game is going to be quite large. The logo itself, I think, is like clear and obvious, right? This idea of like it's very Norse looking. It's drawing us back to that sort of Norse ideal. I like that it is given to us in bright, bold color, much like the costumes of the characters, much like the banner itself. It's not in stone or wood. Though what I think is interesting, if you look at the sort of dragon head on the Banner Saga character, on the bee in Banner Saga, and you track left past our axemen, you can see more of that knotwork on the stone on which our axe-wielding dude is leaning. So, continuing to reinforce that motif. Obviously, the set and setting is imparted to us in costume, right? These look like Viking type characters, especially the dude with the horns. But by placing the horned man front and center here, like the frame is all around him. By placing him front and center, it lets us know that this is no mere Viking saga. This is mythological. This is magical. This is a fantasy tale, because as we all know, the Icelanders of yore did not have massive horns growing from their heads. It's a nice juxtaposition of the like horned helmet Viking trope, but we actually have horned Vikings with no helmets in this case. I'm very curious to meet these characters and to get to sort of understand what their deal is. But I love that the costumes are historical, but the characters who wear them may not be. It makes me wonder if there are going to be other Norse sort of tropes. Are we going to meet shield maidens? Are there going to be witches? What is the system of the gods in this? Is there magic? Like I'm drawn by this single little detail, a man with great horns. I'm wondering like, oh, okay, cool. What's this about? What other fantasy elements are going to be in this game? Again, I think that a title screen should impart an idea of what you can expect, which I think this does. Viking style war theater. Probably some deep characterization because of this kind of characterized moment over here, but also at the backdrop of war. And then it's meant to invite you to ask questions, to say, what are the details of this saga? What are we going to learn as we go? As usual, the least interesting thing on the menu, as usual, is this over here, right? It's very, very hard to make a selection screen seem interesting or fun or cool. This stuff the font choice is fine. It's nothing special. I don't really have anything to say about it except it's there. So yeah, I mean, I think you can if you go really aggressive and make that your focus, right? Like there are a few games that do a really nice job of their UI. Persona 4, Persona 5, both, as chat mentioned, immediately leap to mind. But those are the exception, certainly, rather than the rule. So I am super curious to jump into the Banner Saga, but we would be remiss to do so if I didn't shut up for a second and just take a listen. So notice that the title screen has no music. We do not hear. We have some ambient sound, right? We hear like birds gently chirping very occasionally. We have the whistling of the wind. But you would expect if this noise was in scene, right? If this was in scene sound, we would be able to hear the rustling of the army. That many people in armor and with weapons and with shields gathered together nervously, they make noise, right? We would hear that. But instead the sound only exists to reinforce the foregrounding of this very gentle moment. We're drawn into the intimacy of the moment, not into the pending war, which I think is going to be a contrast. Yes, I think this is very much a calm before the storm situation. I'm super curious to meet these characters. I do not want to wait a moment longer. Let's jump into the Banner Saga, courtesy of Stoic and versus Evil. Let's do the thing.